Before you were born, your mind was already learning. Before you spoke your first word, it was already collecting ideas. Before you knew the name of fear, fear was already shaping your choices. And somewhere along the way, without noticing, most of us learned the same habit. We learned to divide life into two sides, this and that, win and lose, good and bad, me and you, have and have not. And then we spent our days trying to stand on the right side while pushing the wrong side away. But what if the wall between those sides is not as real as it feels? What if the struggle you call life is, in many ways, a struggle with your own mind's habits? What if the freedom you have been searching for is not found by collecting more, but by seeing more clearly? The Buddha called this clear seeing Prajna, the perfection of wisdom. And it begins with a surprising door, not with more answers, but with space. Now, dear friends, welcome to Buddha Peaceful Mind. May your listening be gentle and deep. May these words help you breathe again, and may they bring a little more kindness into your life. There is an old saying, 30 spokes meet at the hub, but it is the empty space at the center that makes the wheel useful. We shape clay into a cup, but it is the empty space inside that holds the water. We build walls and a roof, but it is the empty space within that becomes a home. We often think value lies in what is visible, the spokes, the clay, the walls. But usefulness depends on what is not graspable. The hub's openness, the cup's space, the room's emptiness. The Buddha did not need poetry to teach the truth. He used simple observations. He looked at a flower and saw impermanence. He looked at a flame and saw conditions. He looked at a human mind and saw clinging. And he discovered that suffering is born when we try to hold what cannot be held. So tonight, imagine you are sitting among a gathering in a quiet grove. The air is warm, the trees are still. People have come with questions. Some are rich, some are poor. Some are grieving, some are proud. Some are tired of their own minds. And the Buddha speaks with a voice that does not push, does not flatter, does not threaten. A voice that opens. He says, "Friends, you search for peace as if it were a thing to possess. Yet peace is the nature of a mind that stops grasping. When the hand is open, it does not suffer from losing what it is not holding." Then someone asks, "Blessed One, what should we seek in this life?" The Buddha answers, "Seek the end of suffering. Seek the wisdom that cuts the root of fear." Someone else asks, "What is that wisdom?" And the Buddha says, "It is the wisdom that sees things as they truly are, not as your fear imagines them. It is the wisdom that sees the world is made of conditions, not solid ownership. It is the wisdom that sees that the self you defend all day is not a fixed thing, but a changing process. This wisdom is Prajna." In many traditions, you hear the phrase, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form." But do not rush past it. Many people misunderstand it. Some hear emptiness and think it means nothing matters. Some hear emptiness and feel scared, as if the world will disappear under their feet. Some use emptiness as an excuse to avoid responsibility. This is not the Buddha's teaching. When the Buddha spoke of emptiness, he did not mean a cold void. He did not mean meaninglessness. He meant something very precise, very practical, and deeply liberating. He meant that things are empty of a fixed, independent essence, empty of an unchanging self, empty of permanent ownership. Everything you can point to arises because of causes and conditions. It exists, but it exists in dependence. Like a rainbow that appears when sunlight meets rain and the eye is present. The rainbow is real. You can see it. You can feel wonder. But you cannot grab it and put it in your pocket. It has no solid core you can possess. That is what emptiness points to. Not non-existence, but non-possessibility, non-fixity, openness. This is why emptiness is not the opposite of form. Emptiness is the way form exists. And when you see this, your heart becomes lighter. Because you stop trying to freeze a river. You stop trying to hold smoke. You stop trying to make the world obey your fear. Now the Buddha continues. He says, "Friends, the mind suffers because it divides life into two and then clings to one side. It says, I want pleasure and I reject pain. I want praise and I reject blame. I want gain and I reject loss. I want to exist forever and I reject change." And then the Buddha asks a question. He says, "Have you ever held water tightly in your fist?" People laugh softly. They know the answer. If you squeeze water, it escapes faster. If you open the hand, water can rest there for a moment. The Buddha says, so it is with life. Now, to understand Prajna, we must understand how the mind creates duality. Duality is not evil. It is a useful tool. You must know hot and cold to protect the body. You must know left and right to cross the road. But duality becomes suffering when you believe your labels are absolute. When you believe good and bad are permanent identities. When you believe me and not me are fixed borders. When you believe one side must be held forever and the other must be destroyed. The Buddha called this ignorance, not as an insult, but as a diagnosis. Ignorance is a deep misunderstanding of how things exist. We assume what is changing can be held. We assume what is dependent is independent. We assume what is a process is a solid object. We assume there is a permanent me inside the moving stream of experience. And because we assume this, we fear losing what cannot be kept. We fear the empty space. We fear change. We fear death. So we grasp. And grasping creates tension. Tension creates conflict. Conflict creates suffering. Prajna is the wisdom that cuts through this misunderstanding. Not by thinking more, but by seeing clearly. So the Buddha offers a simple experiment. He says, look at a cup. What makes it a cup? Is it the clay? If the clay breaks into pieces, where is the cup? Is it the shape? If you reshape it, is it still a cup? Is it the name? If you call it a bowl, does the object change? Cup is a relationship. Clay, shaped, used, named. It exists, but it has no fixed cupness inside it that stands alone. So it is empty of an independent essence. Now the Buddha says, look at your anger. Where is it? In the chest? In the breath? In the thoughts? In the memory? When you look closely, anger is not one solid thing. It is heat, tension, images, words, impulses, sensations, arising and changing. When conditions shift, it fades. So anger is empty of a fixed essence. And because it is empty, it can be understood. And because it can be understood, it can be released. This is why Prajna is liberation. Now someone asks, Blessed One, if everything is empty of a self, do we not exist? The Buddha answers carefully. He does not fall into extremes. He does not say, you exist forever as a fixed soul. He does not say, you do not exist at all. He points to what can be known. He says, there is a body. There are feelings. There are perceptions. There are intentions and habits. There is consciousness, knowing. This is a living process. The word I is a convenient label for this process. Then the Buddha gives an image. He says, a river exists, yet it is never the same river from one moment to the next. Water flows, leaves pass, the bed shifts. Still, you call it a river. In the same way, a person exists as a stream of changing conditions. When you search for a fixed owner inside the stream, you cannot find one. This is the teaching of not self, not to erase your humanity, but to free you from the heavy armor of a rigid identity. Because the rigid identity is exhausting. It must always be defended. If someone insults you, the identity feels attacked. If someone praises you, the identity becomes addicted. If you succeed, the identity inflates. If you fail, the identity collapses. So the Buddha teaches a steadier way. He teaches the middle way. The middle way is not lukewarm. It is not compromise. It is seeing beyond extremes. Beyond must have and must not have. Beyond attachment and aversion. Beyond clinging and pushing away. Beyond eternalism and nihilism. Now, to help people understand suffering, the Buddha tells the teaching of the two arrows. He says, when a person is struck by pain, that is the first arrow. The first arrow is part of life. The body gets sick. A loved one dies. A plan collapses. A harsh word lands. But then, most people shoot themselves with a second arrow. They add, this should not be happening. They ruined my life. I am not enough. I will never recover. They add stories, blame, shame, and endless replay. Prajna helps you stop shooting the second arrow, not by pretending the first arrow is pleasant, but by seeing the emptiness of the story you add. The story is a construction. The story is not the whole truth. When you see the story as empty of fixed reality, you can hold it lightly. And when you hold it lightly, it loses its power to pierce you again and again. Now, the Buddha returns to the image of space. He says, without space, nothing can function. Without the empty hub, the wheel cannot turn. Without the space in the cup cannot serve. Then he looks at the people and says, without space in the mind, you cannot be free. If every moment is crowded with clinging, there is no room for wisdom. If your heart is full of should, there is no room for compassion. This is the first great lesson. Freedom requires space. Space is created by letting go. Letting go is made possible by seeing. Seeing is prajna. Now someone says, Blessed One, I tried letting go, but it feels like losing. The Buddha smiles gently and says, you feel you are losing because you believe you own what is not owned. You believe you can keep what cannot be kept. But letting go is not losing what is truly yours. It is releasing what was never yours to hold. Then he says, if you carry a heavy load on your head for years, you may think that load is part of your body. When you put it down, you may feel strange, but that strange feeling is not loss. It is relief. Now the Buddha offers the story of Kisagotami. Kisagotami lost her child. In her grief, she carried the body and begged for medicine. Someone led her to the Buddha. She fell at his feet and cried for a cure. The Buddha did not dismiss her. He did not preach coldly. He gave her a task. Bring me a mustard seed from a home where no one has ever died. She ran through the village. In every house, people offered a mustard seed. And in every house, someone had died. At last, Kisagotami understood. Her suffering was not unique. Death touches all. Impermanence is woven through every life. She returned to the Buddha, not with anger, but with awakened sorrow. In that awakening, her grief transformed. It did not vanish like a trick, but it became spacious. It became connected to the grief of all beings. And in that spaciousness, she could breathe. This is Prajna. To see impermanence not as a punishment, but as reality. To see the world as changing, not as betrayal, but as truth. To see that what we cling to cannot be held, and therefore to open the hand. This opening is not despair. It is compassion. Because when you stop demanding that life be permanent, you start cherishing it as it is. Now, some people misunderstand Prajna and try to become numb. They say, everything is empty, so I should feel nothing. The Buddha says, no. He says, do not confuse wisdom with coldness. Emptiness does not remove love. It removes possessiveness. It removes the kind of love that says, you must not change. It removes the kind of love that says, you belong to me. True love is spacious. It allows. It supports. It does not imprison. So Prajna and compassion rise together. Wisdom without compassion becomes dry. Compassion without wisdom becomes entangled. Together, they free the heart. Now the Buddha speaks of dependent origination. He says, when this is, that is. When this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. This is not theory. It is observation. If there is rain and sun, plants grow. If there is harsh speech, conflict grows. If there is patience, peace grows. If there is mindfulness, clarity grows. Everything depends. Nothing stands alone. This teaching is the backbone of Prajna, because if everything depends, then nothing has a fixed, independent self. So when you look at any phenomenon, ask, what conditions gave rise to this? This question dissolves blame. It dissolves pride. It dissolves rigid identity, because you see that moods are not personal failures. They are conditions. Sleep, food, stress, memories, hormones, words, news. And because they are conditions, they can change. You cannot control everything, but you can influence conditions. This is hope. Now someone in the gathering says, but Blessed One, if everything depends, does that mean I am not responsible? The Buddha says, You are responsible for what you cultivate. Conditions arise, but you can choose which conditions to strengthen. You can water anger or water patience. You can water greed or water generosity. You can water confusion or water clarity. Then he says, your mind is a garden. In every garden, many seeds exist. Some seeds are love, some are patience, some are generosity, some are wisdom, and yes, some are envy, some are cruelty, some are laziness, some are pride. The question is not, do these seeds exist? The question is, which ones do you feed? Now the Buddha speaks about ethical living. He says, if you want wisdom, begin with harmlessness. Not because a god commands it, because harm agitates the mind. If you lie, fear grows. If you steal, restlessness grows. If you act with cruelty, the heart becomes hard and lonely. Ethics is not a cage. Ethics is a protection. It protects your mind from the inner consequences of unskillful actions. Then the Buddha speaks about concentration. He says, a scattered mind cannot see clearly. So the Buddha teaches mindfulness of breathing, not as a ritual, as a way to steady the heart. When the mind learns to rest on the breath, it becomes like clear water. When water is clear, you can see to the bottom. When mind is clear, you can see the truth of experience. Then wisdom grows naturally. So Prajna is not only philosophy, it is the fruit of a trained mind. Now, the Buddha tells the story of the lute strings. A monk named Sona practiced with intense effort. He forced the mind. He forced the body. He became agitated and discouraged. The Buddha asked him, Sona, when the strings of a lute are too tight, what happens? They snap, Sona said. And if the strings are too loose, they do not make a clear sound. The Buddha said, so it is with effort, not too tight, not too loose. This is Prajna in action. Because wisdom is not only seeing emptiness, wisdom is living in the middle way, firm but gentle, clear but kind. Now, let us bring Prajna into modern life, where people feel measured and judged. People chase numbers, followers, likes, ratings, titles, money. They fear being unseen. They fear being ordinary. They fear being nothing. So they fill every moment. They fill silence with noise. They fill emptiness with consumption. But the Buddha says, the problem is not emptiness. The problem is fear of emptiness, because emptiness feels like no ground to stand on. Yet the Buddha teaches that emptiness is the true ground. It is the open space that allows everything to arise and pass. It is the freedom inside experience. If you fear emptiness, you will cling to form, and form will always change. So your life will be anxious. But if you learn to rest in emptiness, you can enjoy form without being destroyed by change. This is the key. Now someone asks, Blessed One, how do we rest in emptiness? The Buddha answers with practice. He says, begin with a pause. A pause is a small emptiness in time. A pause is a space between impulse and action. Most suffering is created because we do not pause. We react, we speak, we send the message, we lash out, we buy, we scroll, we defend. But a pause changes everything. So the Buddha says, When anger arises, do not become it. Pause. Know it. He says, when fear arises, do not run. Pause. Know it. He says, when craving arises, do not feed it immediately. Pause. Know it. This knowing creates space. Space reveals emptiness, and emptiness releases clinging. Now here is a simple method spoken in the Buddha's gentle style. Recognize, allow, investigate. Recognize. Anger is here. Allow. I can feel it without becoming it. Investigate. What conditions are feeding it? Is it sleep deprivation? Is it fear? Is it an old wound? Is it a thought that says, I must be respected? When you see the condition, you create space. In that space, wisdom appears. Then you can choose a skillful response. This is Prajna in daily life. Now the Buddha warns about a common trap. He says, do not cling even to the teaching, because the mind can turn anything into identity. It can turn emptiness into pride. It can turn non-duality into superiority. It can say, I am beyond good and bad. This is not wisdom. This is another self. So the Buddha gives the parable of the raft. He says, a man crosses a river on a raft. After crossing, he does not carry the raft on his head. He leaves it behind. In the same way, use the Dharma to cross, then let go. He also gives another warning, using the image of a snake. He says, if you catch a snake wrongly, it will bite you. In the same way, if you grasp the teaching wrongly, it will harm you. If you use emptiness to avoid compassion, it will bite you. If you use non-self to avoid responsibility, it will bite you. If you use wisdom to look down on others, it will bite you. So hold the teaching correctly. How? By using it to reduce suffering in yourself and in others. This is the test. Now, the Buddha speaks about the 8 worldly winds: gain and loss, fame and disgrace, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. He says, these winds blow through every life. The untrained mind is pushed and pulled. Praise inflates it, blame collapses it, gain attaches it, loss hardens it, pleasure intoxicates it, pain terrifies it. But the trained mind becomes like a mountain. The winds still blow, but the mountain stands. How does it stand? By Prajna. By seeing that these winds depend on conditions. Praise depends on opinion. Fame depends on crowds. Gain depends on causes. Pain depends on body and world. None of these are a fixed self. None of these can define your true nature. So you can enjoy praise without addiction. You can accept blame without hatred. You can taste pleasure without clinging. You can face pain without panic. This is not indifference. This is freedom. Now, let us bring this into a story. A woman worked hard for years. She built a career. She built a reputation. Then one day, a mistake happened, and criticism fell on her like rain. Shame rose. The mind shouted, "You are finished." In that moment, she remembered a teaching. She sat quietly and asked, "What is shame made of?" She noticed heat in the face, tightness in the stomach, images of people's eyes, words repeating, a desire to disappear. She saw it as sensations and thoughts, not as a solid identity. Then she asked, "What conditions led to this mistake?" She saw fatigue, overwork, pressure, lack of support. She did not excuse herself, but she understood. In the morning, she apologized where needed. She corrected the error. She asked for help. And she treated herself with kindness. This is Prajna. Not denying responsibility, not drowning in self-hatred. Learning with space. Now friends, if these teachings are helping you create space in the mind, you may choose to stay close to Buddha Peaceful Mind by subscribing or leaving a gentle like. Not as a demand, but as a quiet way to support the sharing of calm and clarity to others who may be suffering. Now, let us go deeper into the Heart Sutra in a simple way. When it says, "Form is emptiness," it is telling you to look at anything you cling to and see its dependent nature. Look at your youth. It depends on time and biology. It changes. Look at your wealth. It depends on markets and health and opportunity. It changes. Look at your relationship. It depends on communication and trust and conditions. It changes. Look at your body. It depends on food and air and genetics and time. It changes. If you cling to these as permanent, you suffer. But if you see their emptiness, you can love them with realism. And realism is gentle. Realism says, this is precious because it is not guaranteed. Realism says, I will care for it without controlling it. Realism says, I will be present. Now, when it says emptiness is form, it is telling you not to fall into nihilism. It is telling you that emptiness is not a separate realm. It is the nature of the world you are living in. Therefore, compassion matters. Ethics matters. Your actions matter. Because even though things are empty of fixed essence, cause and effect still functions. If you plant a bitter seed, you harvest bitterness. If you plant a kind seed, you harvest kindness. Emptiness does not cancel karma. Emptiness explains karma. Because karma is also dependent origination. Intention leads to action. Action leads to habit. Habit leads to character. Character shapes your life. So live wisely. Now, the Buddha speaks about the mind that wants certainty. He says, you want life to stay, but life is moving. He says, you want your loved ones to never change, but they change. He says, you want your body to never age, but it ages. Then he says, if you fight what is true, you create suffering. If you learn to meet what is true, you find peace. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop demanding the impossible. Now, the Buddha tells another famous parable, the poisoned arrow. A man was struck by a poisoned arrow. His friends tried to help him, but the man said, before you remove it, tell me who shot it. Was he tall or short? What was his name? What kind of bow did he use? What kind of wood? What kind of feathers? The Buddha said, if the man waits for all these answers, he will die. The meaning is clear. We often chase endless theories while suffering continues. Prajna is practical. It removes the arrow. It ends suffering. So if you are listening and you are caught in pain, do not wait to understand everything. Begin with the next skillful step. Breathe. Pause. Speak kindly. Ask for help. Rest. Meditate. Apologize. Forgive. The path is made of small steps. Now, let us speak about the space in the heart again, because you wrote it beautifully. You said, a wide heart has room to contain love. Yes, A narrow heart is crowded with self, crowded with comparisons, crowded with demands, crowded with old pain. A wide heart has space because it is less possessed by me and mine. So how do we widen the heart? We widen it through wisdom. We widen it through compassion. Every time you forgive, space appears. Every time you listen, space appears. Every time you breathe instead of reacting, space appears. Every time you admit you do not know, space appears. This is why humility is part of Prajna. Arrogance is a tight fist. Humility is an open hand. Now, let us address one more confusion. People sometimes say, non-duality means there is no right and wrong. The Buddha did not teach that. He taught skillful and unskillful actions. He taught that harming creates suffering. He taught that kindness creates peace. Prajna does not erase ethics. It purifies ethics from ego. It removes moral pride. It removes moral hatred. It keeps compassion and clarity. So you can still say, this action harms, and you can still act to protect. But you do not need to hate, because hate is also suffering. Now consider how this works in conflict. When someone hurts you, the mind creates a solid enemy. It says, they are the problem. Sometimes, yes, that person's behavior is harmful. But Prajna asks you to look deeper. What conditions are driving them? Fear? Ignorance? Pain? This does not excuse harm, but it helps you respond wisely. You can set boundaries without hatred. You can leave without cruelty. You can protect yourself without poisoning your own mind. This is the middle way. Now the Buddha teaches loving kindness, metta. He says, begin with yourself. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be peaceful. Then extend outward. May you be safe. May you be well. May you be peaceful. Even to difficult people, not because they deserve your approval, but because you deserve freedom from hatred. This practice creates space in the heart. It reduces the sharpness of duality. It reminds you that behind every face is the same wish, to be free from suffering. Now, some people fear that kindness will make them weak. The Buddha says, kindness is not weakness. Kindness without wisdom may become foolish, but kindness with wisdom is strength. Kindness does not mean you say yes to harm. Kindness means you act without hatred. Sometimes the kindest action is to say no. Sometimes the kindest action is to leave. Sometimes the kindest action is to tell the truth. But you tell it with a clean heart. This is wise compassion. Now let us bring in a small story about emptiness in relationships. A man loved his partner, but he loved her like a possession. He wanted her to think like him, to behave like him, to stay the way he remembered. When she changed, he felt betrayed. He argued, he controlled, he suffered. One day he heard a teaching. He realized, I am clinging to an image. He began to practice seeing her as a changing process, not a fixed object. He practiced listening, not to correct, but to understand. He practiced letting her be her. In time, the relationship softened, not because problems disappeared, but because the grip loosened. This is Prajna as love. Now, let us talk about the most tender part, grief. Prajna does not remove grief. It removes the extra suffering created by resistance. When someone you love dies, grief is natural. But the mind adds, "This should not be." The mind adds, "I cannot bear it." The mind adds, "Life is cruel." These additions create the second arrow. Prajna helps you meet grief with space. Space means you allow tears without drowning. You allow pain without building a permanent identity around it. You let grief move like weather through the sky of awareness. And in that sky, you find enough room to keep living. This is not forgetting. This is honoring with wisdom. Now the Buddha speaks about the nature of thoughts. He says, "You suffer because you believe you own the thoughts." Then he asks, "When you look at the sky, do you own the clouds?" People say, "No." He says, "Then why do you think you own your thoughts?" Thoughts arise, thoughts pass. They depend on conditions. If you hold them as me, you suffer. If you see them as conditions, you can let them go. This is prajna. Now let us bring this into a daily practice that is very simple. Every day you can practice one question. When a strong emotion arises, ask, "What am I clinging to right now?" Often the answer is respect, control, safety, approval, certainty. Then ask, "Is this truly permanent?" The honest answer is no. Then breathe and let the grip soften just 5%. That 5% is a doorway. Now, the Buddha also teaches about the self as 5 aggregates: body, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. He says, look closely. Body changes, feelings change, perceptions change, formations change, consciousness changes. If all these change, where is the permanent self? You cannot find it. And this is not a problem. It is relief. Because the self you were defending was a burden. Now, we must be careful. Not self does not mean you treat people as objects. Not self does not mean you ignore pain. Not self means you stop turning experience into a rigid identity. You stop saying, "I am my anger." You stop saying, "I am my failure." You stop saying, "I am my trauma." You begin to say, anger is here. Failure happened. Trauma exists. But you do not become it. This is freedom. Now the Buddha speaks about emptiness as openness. He says, emptiness is the hand opening. A hand can hold a burning coal. If you hold it, you burn. If you open, it falls. The hand remains. Life remains. You simply stop gripping pain. This is the usefulness of emptiness. Now, I will share a small story about the cracked bowl, because it shows how space and imperfection can serve compassion. A monk carried water each day with 2 bowls. One bowl was perfect. The other had a crack and leaked. The cracked bowl felt ashamed. It said, "I am useless. I lose water." The monk said, "Look at the path." Along the side where the cracked bowl leaked, flowers grew. He had planted seeds there, knowing the water would fall. He said, "Because of your crack, life grew." This story is not to romanticize suffering. It is to show that even imperfect conditions can be used for good. When the mind stops judging itself as broken, it becomes available. Available for learning, available for love, available for service. This is Prajna. Now, friends, we live in a time of loud opinions. Many people cling to being right. They cling to identities like flags. They fight online, fight at work, fight at home. The Buddha would say, notice how much suffering comes from clinging to views. Views are useful, but if you cling to them, you create an enemy in your heart. So the Buddha teaches right view. Right view is not stubbornness. Right view is seeing cause and effect, seeing impermanence, seeing suffering, seeing not self. Right view does not inflate the ego, it humbles it. Because right view shows you how little you control, and it shows you how much your actions matter. Now someone asks, Blessed One, how can we know we are growing in Prajna? The Buddha answers with simple signs. Less greed, less hatred, less confusion, more peace, more kindness, more clarity. Not perfect, but moving. If you see these growing, even slowly, wisdom is developing. Now the Buddha also says, do not measure yourself by outer success. Outer success can come and go, but inner freedom is stable. A person can be poor and peaceful. A person can be rich and anxious. So the true measure is the state of the heart. Now let us talk about fake positivity. Because many people today push themselves to look bright while feeling pain inside. They fear the dark. They fear emptiness. So they paint a smile on a wound. But the Buddha teaches honest awareness. He says, if sadness is here, no sadness. If fear is here, no fear. Do not suppress. Do not perform. Just know. Knowing is already space. Knowing is already freedom beginning. This is why mindfulness is not only calm. Mindfulness is honesty. Honesty creates wisdom. Wisdom creates peace. Now, let us bring in the Diamond Sutra's gentle reminder, paraphrased simply. The Buddha says, see phenomena like a dream, like a bubble, like a shadow. This does not mean suffering is not real. It means the solidity you project is not real. It means your labels are not ultimate truth. When you see this, you stop clinging. And when you stop clinging, compassion remains. Now I will speak directly to those who feel stuck. If you feel stuck, it often means you are clinging to one side of a duality. You cling to being respected, so criticism destroys you. You cling to control, so uncertainty terrifies you. You cling to being needed, so solitude feels empty. You cling to being perfect, so mistakes feel like death. Prajna shows you the middle. It shows you that respect and criticism are both passing winds. Control and uncertainty are both conditions. Solitude and connection are both part of life. Perfection is a concept, not a living reality. When you see this, the knot loosens, and a new space opens. In that space, you can move again. Now the Buddha offers another simple teaching, the breath. He says, breath is a refuge, not because breath is magical, because breath is present. When the mind is lost in past and future, return to breath. Breath is your doorway into now. And now is where clinging can be seen. Now is where wisdom can arise. Now is where freedom can begin. So the Buddha teaches, breathe and know you are breathing. That simple act creates space. Now friends, if this teaching is resonating, you can support it quietly with a like or subscribe, so Buddha Peaceful Mind can continue offering these calm talks to more people. Let it be a small act of generosity. Now, let us go deeper into the phrase, beyond duality. Beyond duality does not mean you stop seeing differences. It means you stop being trapped by opposites. You stop building your identity on one side and demonizing the other. You stop thinking you can have pleasure without pain. You stop thinking you can have gain without loss. You stop thinking you can have life without change. Beyond duality means you see that opposites arise together. Light is known because of dark. Sound is known because of silence. Full is known because of empty. Meeting is known because of parting. And this does not make life meaningless. It makes life tender. Because when you see that everything depends, you become humble and grateful. Now the Buddha says, do not fear the empty space. He says, the empty space is where wisdom lives. Why? Because in emptiness, there is no fixed self to defend. In emptiness, there is no rigid story to cling to. In emptiness, compassion can move freely. Now I will offer one more story, short and clear. A person asked the Buddha, "Who am I, really?" The Buddha asked, "When you were a child, were you the same as you are now?" "No," the person said. "When you were a teenager, were you the same as you are now?" "No." "And yet you say, 'I am me.' What is this me?" The person was quiet. The Buddha said, "You are a stream. Do not try to turn a stream into a stone." This is Prajna. Now, friends, we must also remember that wisdom is not a performance. It is not something you show to others. It is a quiet shift inside. It is less reactivity, less resentment, less grasping, more presence, more compassion. So do not chase spiritual identity. Chase relief from suffering. Chase kindness. Chase clarity. Before we move toward the closing practice, let us slow down and make Prajna even clearer, because the mind loves to turn wisdom into a slogan and then forget to live it. The Buddha often taught with two levels of truth, even if he did not use that exact phrase in every place. There is the truth of daily life, where cups hold water, roads must be crossed, money buys food, and words can heal or harm. This is the truth of convention, the truth of practical living. And there is the deeper truth, where everything is seen as a temporary meeting of conditions, without a fixed owner, without a permanent core. This is the truth that ends clinging. Prajna does not reject the practical truth. It does not say, "Nothing exists, so I will ignore my responsibilities." That is not wisdom. That is confusion wearing a spiritual mask. Prajna says, "Yes, I will live responsibly in the world, but I will not build a prison inside my mind by clinging to fixed ideas." It says, "I will pay my bills, but I will not worship money." It says, "I will care for my body, but I will not pretend the body is permanent." It says, "I will love my family, but I will not treat them as possessions." This is an important balance, because some people, when they first hear emptiness, fall into carelessness. They say, "If everything is empty, Why be kind? The Buddha would answer, because suffering is not empty to the one who feels it. Because actions still have consequences. Because compassion is the natural expression of wisdom. And some people, when they hear emptiness, fall into fear. They say, if everything is empty, then life is meaningless. The Buddha would answer, meaning is not found by forcing life to be permanent. Meaning is found in freedom from suffering and in compassionate action. Now let us look closely at how the mind creates duality, because seeing the mechanism is already liberation. A sound arises. The ear contacts it. Immediately the mind labels it, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Then the mind adds another layer. I like, I dislike, I do not care. Then the mind adds a story. I deserve more. I am being treated unfairly. I must protect myself. Then the mind adds identity. I am the kind of person who never accepts disrespect. I am the kind of person who must be admired. Then the mind adds time. This always happens. It will never change. My whole life is like this. This is how suffering grows. Not from the first contact, but from the mind's proliferation. The Buddha described this as the mind spinning webs. One small sensation becomes an entire world of conflict. If you want to understand emptiness, watch this process in real time. When someone speaks a harsh word to you, before you respond, notice the first sensation. Perhaps heat, perhaps contraction, perhaps a shock in the chest. Then notice the label, unpleasant. Then notice the craving to push away. I want this to stop. Then notice the story. They are attacking me. Then notice the identity. I cannot let anyone talk to me like that. Now ask, gently, where is the fixed me that is being attacked? You may find only sensations, thoughts, memories, and images. These are real experiences, yes, but they are not a solid self. When you see that, even for 1 second, space opens. In that space, you can choose a response instead of a reaction. This is the practical power of Prajna. Now, the Buddha would sometimes ask his students to look at a simple illusion to understand this. Imagine you are walking at night, and you see something on the path that looks like a snake. Your body reacts before you think. The heart jumps, the legs freeze. Fear rises like fire. Then you bring a lamp closer, and you see it is only a rope. The rope did not change. What changed was the mind's label. The suffering was born from misunderstanding. This is a perfect image of ignorance and wisdom. Many of our fears are rope snake fears. We see an email and imagine disaster. We see a facial expression and imagine rejection. We see a silence and imagine abandonment. We see a mistake and imagine we are ruined. Prajna is bringing the lamp, not to deny pain, but to see clearly. When you see clearly, the mind stops creating extra suffering. Now, let us speak about the emptiness inside the cup again, but now in the heart. What is the empty space inside you? It is awareness. Awareness is the space in which sensations appear. Awareness is the space in which thoughts appear. Awareness is the space in which emotions appear. Awareness is not a thought. Awareness is not an emotion. Awareness is like the sky. Clouds come and go, but the sky is not harmed. This does not mean the sky is separate from the clouds. It means the sky is spacious enough to hold them. The Buddha did not ask you to chase a special state. He asked you to recognize what is already present. Even now, as you listen, you know you are listening. That knowing is awareness. That knowing has space. Prajna is recognizing this space and living from it. Now, let us deepen the meditation practice in a very simple, heart-touching way. If you want to taste Prajna directly, do not start with big questions. Start with the breath. Feel one breath as it comes in. Feel one breath as it goes out. Now notice, the in-breath arises, stays for a moment, and passes. The out-breath arises, stays for a moment, and passes. Even a breath teaches impermanence. Now notice, you did not command the breath to exist. It is happening because of the body, the lungs, the conditions of life. Even a breath teaches dependent origination. Now notice, you cannot find a fixed owner of the breath. There is breathing, but no separate breather you can locate. Even a breath teaches not self. This is why the Buddha loved simplicity, because the deepest truth is present in the smallest thing. Now, if you want to make this practice even clearer, add these gentle phrases with the breath. Breathing in, I know this is arising. Breathing out, I know this is passing. Breathing in, I know this is not mine. Breathing out, I rest in letting go. Do not force the words. Let them be a soft pointing. Then return to simple feeling. Now, the Buddha also taught 4 foundations of mindfulness: body, feelings, mind, and mental objects. When you practice these, prajna naturally grows. Mindfulness of the body helps you see impermanence. The body changes every moment. Breath changes. Posture changes. Energy changes. Mindfulness of feelings helps you see how craving begins. Pleasant feeling arises. Craving wants to keep it. Unpleasant feeling arises. Aversion wants to push it away. Neutral feeling arises. Boredom wants stimulation. When you see this, you stop being a puppet. Mindfulness of mind helps you recognize states: angry mind, loving mind, restless mind, calm mind, confused mind, clear mind. When you recognize a state, you create space around it. And mindfulness of mental objects helps you see the teachings in action. The hindrances, the aggregates, the sense bases, the factors of awakening, the 4 noble truths. All of these are not only ideas, they are things you can witness within your own experience. This is why prajna is not something you borrow from books. Books can point, but seeing must happen inside you. Now, some people will ask, if there is no fixed self, who is practicing? The Buddha would say, practice is happening. Just like walking happens, just like breathing happens. In conventional language, we say, I am practicing. That is fine. But when you cling to the I as a solid owner, you suffer. So practice with humility. Practice with playfulness. Practice without heavy self-judgment. Now, let us bring this into the issue of self-criticism again, because it is a hidden form of duality. Self-criticism often comes from an inner split. There is the ideal me, and there is the current me. The mind says, I should be this, and then attacks what is present. This attack does not produce wisdom, it produces shame. and shame often produces more unskillful behavior. Prajna sees the ideal as a concept. It sees the current as a process. It chooses improvement without hatred. It says, I see what is here, and I will train gently. This is compassionate discipline. Now, the Buddha taught that remorse can be wholesome, but guilt can be poisonous. Remorse says, I see harm, I want to repair. Guilt says, I am bad, I deserve suffering. Remorse opens, guilt tightens. Prajna transforms guilt into remorse and then into action. Acknowledge, apologize when possible. Make amends when appropriate. Then begin again. This is the clean path. Now let us speak about how Prajna helps you meet success, because many people suffer not only in failure, but also in success. When you succeed, the mind says, now I must keep this. It becomes afraid of losing. It becomes attached to reputation. It becomes hungry for more praise. This is how success becomes a trap. Prajna allows you to enjoy success without turning it into a cage. It says, this success arose from conditions, effort, support, timing, luck, health, teachers, opportunities. Let me be grateful. Let me stay humble. Let me not cling. Humility is not self-hatred. Humility is accurate seeing. Accurate seeing is wisdom. Now let us speak about how Prajna helps you meet failure, because many people take failure personally. They say, I am a failure. But Prajna says, failure is a moment of conditions not meeting your plan. It is information. It is not identity. So you can learn, adjust, and continue. When you remove identity from outcomes, life becomes workable. Now, the Buddha offers another simple story. A person came to him and said, Blessed One, I want to be free, but my mind is full of thoughts. The Buddha asked, when you hear a drum, do you blame the drum for making sound, or do you simply hear it? The person said, I simply hear it. The Buddha said, so it is with thoughts. Hear them. Do not blame them. Do not chase them. Do not become them. Let them be sounds in the mind. This is how you live with emptiness. Not by killing the mind, by not taking it personally. Now, let us explore the relationship between emptiness and compassion one more time, because it is essential. If you only hear not self, you might think life becomes lonely. But the opposite is true. When you see not self, the wall between you and others softens. You see interdependence. Your breath depends on trees. Your food depends on earth and farmers. Your language depends on ancestors. Your body depends on the sun. So the boundary between me and world becomes more flexible. And with that flexibility, compassion becomes natural. You help others not to be a hero, but because it is the same life. You do not harm because it is the same life. This is wisdom becoming love. Now a person asks, Blessed One, if someone harms me, should I simply accept it because there is no self? The Buddha says, no. He says, non-harming includes not harming yourself. He teaches wise boundaries. He teaches that compassion does not require staying in abuse. You can leave harm without hatred. You can protect yourself without cruelty. You can speak truth without rage. This is the middle way. Now consider another everyday struggle: comparison. We compare bodies. We compare money. We compare relationships. We compare spiritual progress. Comparison is a form of duality that makes the heart small. It says, I am above, or I am below. Prajna sees comparison as a thought, a mental formation, not an ultimate truth. Then compassion arises, because you realize everyone is suffering in some way. Even the person you envy is anxious about something. Even the person you judge is carrying pain. This does not excuse harmful actions, but it softens your heart. And a softened heart is a wiser heart. Now the Buddha also spoke of equanimity, upekkha. Equanimity is not coldness. It is a steady heart that does not collapse in the winds. It is the fruit of prajna. Because when you see impermanence, you stop demanding that life obey your preferences. You still care, you still act, but you are less shaken. Now let us make the talk more vivid with another story. There is a simple parable about an empty boat. A man rows his boat across a river. Suddenly, another boat crashes into him. He becomes furious. He shouts, he curses. Then he looks and sees the other boat is empty, drifting. Instantly, his anger drops. Nothing changed in the impact. What changed was his mind's story. When he thought there was a person to blame, anger arose. When he saw there was no person, anger vanished. This shows the power of concepts. Often we collide with life and imagine an enemy. We imagine intention where there is only condition. We imagine disrespect where there is only stress. We imagine rejection where there is only distraction. Prajna does not make you naive, but it helps you see more accurately, so you suffer less. Now, let us speak about the most worth seeking in a human life. The Buddha did not say the most worth seeking is comfort. Comfort is pleasant, but it is not reliable. He did not say the most worth seeking is fame. Fame is fragile and depends on crowds. He did not say the most worth seeking is pleasure. Pleasure fades and can become addiction. He said the most worth seeking is liberation, freedom from greed, freedom from hatred, freedom from delusion, freedom from the second arrow, freedom from the prison of a rigid self. This is the highest value, and prajna is the key that unlocks it. Now you may wonder, how long does it take? The Buddha would say, do not measure the path by time alone. Measure it by direction. Are you less reactive? Are you more honest? Are you more compassionate? Are you more present? Even a small shift is real, and the path is built by small shifts repeated. Now I want to speak tenderly to those who carry trauma, because emptiness teachings can be difficult if misunderstood. If you carry trauma, do not use emptiness to bypass your pain. Do not say, it is empty, so I should not feel it. That can become another form of suppression. Instead, use prajna gently. See the pain as sensations and memories arising in the body. Give them kindness. Give them time. Seek wise support. Healing is also a path of conditions. Prajna does not rush healing. It creates space for healing. Now the Buddha's path also includes community, wise friends. In Buddhism, this is called Sangha. A mind is influenced by what surrounds it. If you spend time in anger, anger grows. If you spend time in greed, greed grows. If you spend time in wise teachings, wisdom grows. So choose your environment where you can. And if your environment is difficult, Then make your inner environment a refuge through practice. Even 1 minute of mindful breathing each day can begin to change the tone of your life. Now, the Buddha offers another key teaching: right speech. Because much suffering is created through words. Before you speak, ask, is it true? Is it beneficial? Is it timely? Is it kind? If it is true but not beneficial, silence may be wiser. If it is beneficial but not timely, wait. If it is timely but not kind, soften it. These simple questions create space before speech, and that space is Prajna. Now, the Buddha also teaches right intention. Intention is the seed of karma. If your intention is to harm, you harm yourself first. If your intention is to help, you heal yourself first. So each morning, set an intention. Today I will not add suffering. Today I will practice kindness. Today I will practice honesty. Today I will create space. This is not superstition, it is training. Now, let us bring this entire talk into one clear sentence. You suffer because you cling to what is changing, and you call it mine. Prajna shows you that what is changing is not yours to own, but yours to care for while it is here. This is the shift, from ownership to stewardship. From grasping to presence, from fear to love. Now, friends, we are close to the closing practice, but I will give one more small, powerful reflection, because it is simple enough to remember in any situation. When life is hard, ask, what is the tightest part of me right now? Often it is the jaw, the chest, the belly, the throat. Then ask, what am I insisting must be different? Then breathe and soften 1%. Just 1%. 1% is enough, because 1% creates space. And in space, Prajna can appear. Now we return to the Buddha's gentle promise. Not a promise of a perfect life, but a promise of a freer heart. He says, if you see clearly, you will cling less. He says, if you cling less, you will suffer less. He says, if you suffer less, you will love more freely. And that is the miracle. Not a miracle in the sky, a miracle in your daily mind. Now, let us move to the closing practice. Now I will offer a closing practice you can carry for the rest of your life. It is simple. 3 breaths. Whenever you feel lost, do this. First breath. Acknowledge. This is what is here. Second breath. Soften. I can allow this without becoming it. Third breath. Release. This is changing. I do not need to hold it. Then choose one skillful action, a kind word, a truthful apology, a moment of rest, a boundary spoken gently, a step away from harm, a step toward help. This is the path. Small, steady, real. Now let us end as the Buddha ends many teachings. Not with a threat, not with a promise of perfection, but with a blessing. May you see clearly. May you cling less. May you love more freely. May you suffer less. May you be at peace. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free.